Hillel, have no fear. Avi, have no fear. You didn't lose much yesterday. We only learned one paragraph because we did have a great discussion, and I urge you to hear the
Rav David of Tolna has a Torah on Rosh Chodesh Iyar where he says the only true fear is Yiras Romamus. All the others are just gateways so that we can have that true fear. So okay. I have no fear.
Okay, and I look forward one day to learning from you what that true fear is. Okay, so page 21, paragraph 3. In paragraph 1, the Rebbe basically told us, the previous Rebbe, the author, told us how difficult but important it is on the part of the educator, the guide, and the parent. I'm adding the word parent, he doesn't say parent, to prepare themselves with responsibility, hard work, and much effort to assess the student. In the second paragraph, the Rebbe added that every activity... Yes, Moshe?
I'm sorry, forgive me for interrupting. I want to ask this question now before we get started. There's two things that came up in my about this yesterday I wanted to ask about. Number one is the whole concept of this Kuntres seems strikingly similar in concept to the Sefer by the Eish Kodesh called Chovas HaTalmidim. It's based on the exact same pasuk. I'm just curious I'd be very curious to know if there was any contact between
well, there's no question. There's no question in my mind that they knew each other because they both lived in Poland and they lived there from 1933 till the Holocaust. So that's 7 solid years. But I haven't investigated this, and I'll try to ask. But I feel for sure that they knew each other. We do know that the Sefer Chovas HaTalmidim of the Peshiatzir, the Eish Kodesh, I believe uses ideas from Tanya. Am I wrong? Does he not cite Tanya?
It could be.
Yeah.
Hillel, you
learned it, right? He cites Tanya.
Yeah. I'm learning it now. It's yes. There's a lot of Tanya.
A lot of Tanya, Moshe. And Moshe, as a God by Eish Kodesh, I think it's time to learn the Sefer. But anyway,
yeah, right.
Yeah, just a little jab. Anyway,
The other question I have though is that I know there's a Sefer that was written by Rabbi Chodakov on education for an maybe it's for an I have it at home, the English translation.
I have it as well.
Okay, I'm just curious. Was there any overlap also with?
I would have to take a good look at it. Mitzvah Shem Shabbos. I'll try to do that if I remember. And I would think. He worked for the Frierdiker Rebbe. 100%. That again, But to tell you specifically, I do know. I have a friend, Professor Don Seaman of Emory University in Atlanta. He's Shomer Shabbos, and he's a genius. He's very bright. He's a Harvard graduate, and he, I know, has studied Peshiatzia, and I'm going to ask him the question that you asked. It might have an interesting answer to that question. It could be academics have actually made some study of it. I'll look into it. Let's go. Thank you for that. Okay, so now, in the second paragraph on 21, the Rebbe talks about a pu'ulas ha'adam, any activity, any action, Yoini, of a person, he says, begins first in a spiritual state within the man, then from there it goes to the physical. We've discussed this. It's a shalah, by the way. It's the shalah HaKodesh. He writes already in his Sefer, and it's even from earlier, but he writes that everything in Gashmias has a source in Ruchnias. Well, the previous Rebbe, without citing the Shalah, because Chassidus embellishes that idea heavily and says that every Pa'ula Gashmias begins in a spiritual space within man. So the Rebbe says, therefore, If you want to succeed with an action, you want your child to behave better, you want your student to study better, it requires a hachshara, a preparation on your part. And what is that preparation? One of the preparations, it says, is assessing your talents. And we spoke a lot about this yesterday. I'm not going to repeat. But a person needs to really, and Yonason made an excellent point, you need to really hone in on what your talents are and what your talents are not. Not everyone is shaykh to be a teacher. I mean, everyone is shaykh to be a parent, but not everyone's shaykh to be the best parent. They just don't have the skills for whatever reason. So it's important to know your talents. And what I said yesterday, just to add, is part of knowing your talents is know what aren't your talents and to delegate to others, even if it means outside of yourself and your wife who have that talent in that area to help you in that situation with your child, with your student, etc. So that was paragraph number 2. Now let's go to paragraph number 3. Hakishorin himaknas elokim. So the Rebbe right away says, the talent, every talent that we have, whatever the talent is, it's a matana, it's a gift from Hashem, from God. Yesh mechunin Hashem yizborech b'matnas kishun hakol. There are some people that are endowed by God with a talent for singing. Bishir uvezimra. Others with a talent, Bishir uvezimra is part of the first talent. Singing, zimra, another type of singing, all kinds of singing. Number 2, yesh mechunan, some are...
I want to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
The word shir is voice, and zimra with the keli.
Thank you. I know that, but I'm not sure that's what he means here, but it could be, yes. I know that. I didn't translate it that way because, the English doesn't translate it that way, and I'm not sure that's what he means, but I guess it could mean that too. Thank you. Number 2, yesh mechunan, some are endowed, b'chishron ha'ne'oim v'hatofa, with the talent of oratory and rhetoric. There are some people that have a great chush, a great talent in going into a room and use rhetoric to fire up a crowd. They might not know too much, but they're gifted in the gift of the gab with rhetoric, and they can get it done. Others are great orators. They really have what to say, and they know how to say it properly. So that's called B'chishrein HaNe'um, the talent for speaking, for oratory, V'hatofa, and rhetoric. Number 3, Yesh Mechunan B'chishrein Hayira. There are those that are talented for instruction. V'yesh mechunan, and there are those that are talented, are graced by Hashem, b'chishron hachinuch v'hadracha, with educating, ukedoim, and similar, b'shar ha'kishronis, for many other talents. So do you see clearly that the Rebbe divides 2 types of talents? The last 2. One is called chishron ha'hira, the talent of instruction. The word Torah is associated with the word hora'ah. And there are others that are gifted with the talent of chinuch v'hadracha, which is the name of this kuntres, of this essay, Klolei HaChinuch v'hadracha, which is educating and guidance. So right here, the Rebbe is alluding to what he's going to go into in the next chapter, the difference between an educator and an instructor. And I'm not going to tell you what that is. I'll leave you in suspense till the next chapter. But we do see that he already lays the groundwork right here for the difference. However, although all the talents, any and all talents of man, are soul powers that are spiritual, as we discussed in paragraph 2, all our limbs, asher etzem hanefesh, that the essence of the soul, mispashit bahem, expands itself into these limbs, lahacha yosam, to enliven them, bechol echod lefi inyonei, to each limb according to its content. Loseis loy hakoyach, to give that aver the power, the ois, and the might, lifel pulasai, to do its job. So, the eye gets a koyach from the nefesh, from the soul, to see. The ear to hear, the mouth to speak, the nose to smell, etc. It all comes me'etzem echad, from one core essence. But when it expands itself, it goes into individualized kalim, receptacles, vessels, i.e. parts of the body. V'im heyois, let's continue inside. And although etzem hanefesh etzem ruchni, although the essence of the soul is a spiritual essence, habilti mechalik ben kishoron lekishoron, that in its state of essence, avi, does not discern between one talent and another talent. In other words, from the perspective and the way the talents are in the soul, it's one wholesome nefesh, soul. Not, it's a seeing soul, a hearing soul, a speaking soul, and a smelling soul. Totally not. It's one soul. It's one nefesh. So this is a rhetorical question. The im hayos is rhetorical. Although in the way these talents are, in their essence, there is no discernment between one talent and the other. B'chol zeh, nevertheless, this is the retort to the rhetorical question. It is mandatory. It is absolutely necessary for the talents to divide based on what they are, their essence, and what they want to accomplish in the world. And in other words, and this is an important point, and we see this, there are people that in essence they have a talent in a certain area, but unless that talent is given away by the person to express itself, it can remain dormant in the person and never express itself. And you see this all the time. Many talented people in many areas live a life of 70, 80, 120 years and did not express their talent for whatever reason. Whether they weren't given an opportunity, whether they weren't taught how to develop a talent, or whether they're self-destructive. So the Rebbe says in this paragraph that you must know that in essence, the talents are all one in the essential essence of the soul. They only become different when they expand themselves. But when they expand themselves, it's the essence that makes the expansion. So in other words, the two work together and they're inseparable. That's the point. So for example, a person who takes a talent that he has and uses the talent in a way that's contrary to the way the talent is in his essence will fail. Or the talent will be short-lived, or the talent won't be received well. Why? Because the person went off on a tangent, and the person, because of his own shtick, trip, and ego, took the talent and separated the talent from its essence, inserting his own self, his own ego, and then the talent will fail. Because the talent is always successful when it's inseparable from the essence. Hillel, what I just said now? Does it bring to mind anything in your study, in your work and in psychology, etc.?
It brings to mind a lot because talent is such a personal expression. So requires such contemplation to nurture, and so easy to kind of discourage in people. Artistic expression, musical expression, academic expression. I mean, I have a grandson now whose idea of a good time is writing computer code. It's like such a unique talent, and I'm so mindful that for me those kinds of things were so discouraged by the way the kind of education I had, and so things that in my adult life have been particularly interesting to me, especially in the realm of science and math. They were kind of ruined for me because of my personal education.
Right.
Everything was sort of rote and
right.
And performance oriented. Right. So I'm with you. Yeah. I do have to leave. I have a 3:00 appointment.
Okay.
So
okay.
I just want to say for now, the way my schedule is, I want to apologize, Biklal, because I may have to do that fairly often, I appreciate being here, and I don't want to disrupt anybody. But I'm glad you
right.
So reached out to me at this moment.
Okay, great.
Okay, Kol Tov, everybody.
Kol Tov, take care. So, back to the text. And we see, just before the text, Chavre, think back to yourself, to your younger years, when, for whatever reason, Hillel, alluded to some of that now, you weren't given a chance, for whatever reason, whether you were overwhelmed with this or that, and you didn't get a chance to express your talent. And then as you get older, maybe time frees up a little more, and you start expressing your talent, you'll be so much happier. The happiness comes with the ability to express your true self, which is expressed in the talent that Hashem has endowed every person. And every person has a talent. You understand? Because the talents, Yoni, have details. Let's say singing, right? There's operatic singing, there's Hasidic singing, there's jazz singing, there's rock and roll singing, there is, the beat. The latest thing is the beat type of singing. There's all kinds of singing. So there isn't just one singing. We put it under one umbrella, singing. Right? So this is like we're saying now in the Sphira, Chesed Shebe Gevura, Gevura Shebe Chesed, all the one detail within the detail. The same is true here. And when you find the chord that strikes you, you're going to be very happy. So let's say Moshe is an artist, right? Within art, there's this type of drawing, that type of drawing, and it takes a while, and it's an ongoing process where certain things make you happier, and I see it in my writing. There's certain things that I write that I do it because it needs to be done. But then there are times when I write about something that really, I'm interested in. It's a whole different quality of writing. It's an elation. That's what the Rebbe is talking about here, Yaakov. The Rebbe is talking about finding that aspect in yourself that brings you elation. And it's very, very important. And we could do it because Hashem has endowed us with it. Now it's a matter of finding what that is. Also, one should not go off on the high horse and forget everything else and everyone else because of his talent. That's also not normal. And that has bad results. So on one hand, you need to find your talent cherish your talent, and integrate it into the non-talent world. And that's a chush. That is a talent itself. Because if you have a great talent and it causes you to negate every situation or anyone else that doesn't have that talent, you're going to be a loner. And ultimately, you're not going to be happy. Because the Rambam already says that we're social beings. We need people. Okay? And those few exceptions that don't need people are exceptions to a rule. But everyone, and I want to tell you, even loners, they love to have a conversation once in a blue moon with a person. Okay? There's no one that wants to sit and look at a wall and talk to a wall. And if he or she does, they're not well, Nebuch. You know, a person must talk to someone else. Azulas. In Chassidus, you understand, we have the word in the Maimarim of Ranat, if you remember from the Rashab, Azulas. Azulas is translated as a partner, as a friend, and also as an other. Azulas is anything outside of yourself. And when a person has Azulas, they really thrive. And it's not only because they have someone that they can convince to the way they think. Absolutely not. That's ego. It's that man is healthiest when he communicates his talent or who he is to another. That's the way Hashem created mankind. Yes, Yaakov.
I wanted to share with you a quote that was made aware to me recently from the Piasetzna, and I put it on our chat. And the Piasetzna says, the human soul relishes sensation, not only a pleasant feeling, but simply the very experience of stimulation, even if that sensation comes from depression or crying. One who is clever will fulfill this need with passionate prayer and limud Torah. The soul whose divine service is without passionate feeling will have to find its stimulation elsewhere. It will either be driven to achieve even forbidden sensation, or will become emotionally ill from lack of stimulation.
Beautiful.
So we see, he really brings out amazing that I remember hearing this from one of the Twerskis, that a person craves this enthusiasm and passion. And when we infuse our avodah with that, a person, doesn't realize, most of the Welt is hung up on sports for their enthusiasm. That's their outlet. Lahavdil, we have our own, of passionate prayer, passionate learning, and that's how we make it. That's how we survive in this world. Right.
Yasher Koyach.
You see, the lahafich is
right.
We crave one or another.
So before you got on, Moshe asked if there's any similarities between the Psiatzner's teachings and what we're learning here. Moshe, here you have an example that sounds very similar. I mean, so it's who got it from who? I don't know. I think they both came to it themselves, being very big tzaddikim and minds and students of the Eibishter, But thank you very much. Fascinating what you just read. Okay, next paragraph. Last paragraph in 21. Ha'yischalkus ha'klolis b'ha'kishroinos. The talents that are divided, they're divided generally into shnei sugim, two categories. Aleph, 1. Kishroinos hapoyalim begeshem. Talents that have physical effects. K'moy kishron atziur. The kishron, the talent to draw. Umeleches, next page. And the activity to play. Machshavas be'imun yad. Instruments. No, sorry, that's the next one. To play a sort of type of, and to weave. Hamachshavas be'imun yad, here he's translating as weaving. We're on top of now the next page, 23. Oi, or Kishrein, the talent, Hazimra, playing instruments. So, Yonason, you were right in the way you translated. Very good. Playing Kalim, Shoinim, different instruments, Ukedaim, and similar. So all of these he classifies as group A, known as physical effects, talents that have a physical effect. Number 2, Yairi, Beis, Kishroinos, Hapoyalim, Baruchni, talents that have a spiritual effect. Kimoi, Kishroin, Hanaum, Vahatofa. For example, the talent of oratory talent and rhetoric talent, La'oirer Rikshais Hashoimim, to awaken, to arouse, or the word that the Peshetzia used that Yaakov quoted, to stimulate a listening audience, to get them to move, to get them to excited, to get them to think. Next is Kishrein Halimud V'Hayro, a talent for educating and counseling, he teaches here. Teaching and instructing. Take that back. Kishrein Halimud V'Hayro is teaching and instructing. And finally, Kishrein HaChinuch V'Hadracha V'Adoima, the Kishrein of educating and counseling, and so forth. And again, that will be explained, I believe, in the next chapter. However, Ha'izchalkos zu, hizchalkos hasugim hakololim mitzad hashpa'osa mechutz lahem. In a way, he's like repeating himself, but with different words. And again, the words are very, very unconventional for Hasidus. Any Hasidus, not just Chabad, but you will not find this type of writing in any Hasidus. The wording in Hebrew. The Hischalkut, the division, is a general sugim kolalim. It's a general categorical difference, Hischalkut, that's due to its result orientation. Mitzat hashpa'atam michutz lahem. In other words, this group of talents seeks a result. So when the objective of a talent is the result, it's a different type. It's a certain type of group of category. So let's take drawing art, and maybe Moshe could talk about it more if you'd like. But it would seem like there's one type of art that the objective is the result. Let me talk about it in my world, in writing. There's no question that I have an editor. He's from actually in Pittsburgh. So he's been editing some of my books. He's editing something I'm writing now, a book on Gimel Tammuz on the Rebbe. Hashem, I hope to have a new book on the Rebbe. Right? Now, he edits it in one way. When he sends it back to me, there's things that I change because I know what result I want. And I believe I know my target audience. He is an editor. He's doing his job lishma. He's, is it written well? Are things flowing and all that? And I might make a change, and I do make a change in certain things because I know that I'm looking for a certain target audience who needs to hear something in this way or that way. So, in a way, I am fulfilling what it says here. It's a talent that's based on michutz lahem, outside of the way maybe it should be in its authenticity, which is well written, flowing, regardless if it talks to the person reading it. He doesn't have that agenda. Right, Avi? His agenda is well written English. That's it. You will sell the book, you won't sell the book. You will stimulate a person, you won't stimulate. You want him to read more and learn the Rebbe's Torah more or not. Whatever my agendas are, right? Every writer has an agenda. And every artist has an agenda. If they don't, it's about time they get an agenda. Because it's important. It's important. We mentioned before the picture of the Rebbe with wearing a shtreimel. in Handel's writing, there's a lot of darkness. A lot of it was done in pencil. He had a very, very hard life. The Nazis in Machshemam killed his wife and all his children. He was in Great Depression. And then, Min HaShamayim, through family and others, he was pulled out of that depression, and the Rebbe contributed to his last 25 years on earth in probably one of the happiest times of his life. But you notice in his writing a darkness, a morbidity, because he lived it. Nebuch. So there are, now on one hand, if he stopped and thought, wait a minute, are people able to handle, or let's talk about Yoni, Tanchum, your wife's grandfather's famous picture of the previous Rebbe. It's very black, very dark. I saw the picture.
Yeah.
Why? He drew it after the previous Rebbe passed away. And he was, I'm not saying he was depressed.
It's at my mother-in-law's house in the Yerushalayim.
Okay, he was very sad, very, very sad. For him, he lost his Rebbe. And he's an artist, and he expressed himself. He didn't care whether it sells or it doesn't sell, or whether someone's going to say, hey, why don't you make the picture with a great smile? No, he's expressing his inner feelings. So let's go back to the text. So the Rebbe says, line 2 of that paragraph. This division is due to tfisas hakishronis bepulosam, which means it's delineated by the way talents are expressed within their resultant action. Ubo b'ischalkus klolis upratis, and it manifests itself in the differences that we mentioned before, the categorical differences. She'ena doiman, he repeats, you can't compare at all, klal, tfisas hakishroin bepulosoi, the talent as expressed in the activity, in the physical activity, you can't compare it litfisosoi to its expression shel hakishorin of the talent bepulosoi haruchnis, as it's in its ruchniya state, the spiritual state. Ukeshem sheyash hevdel bislapshusei shel hakishroin. And just as there's a difference when the talent invests itself besug hapoel and begeshem in the various different physical categories, you can't compare the investment of the talent of drawing to the way the talent invests itself to singing and playing an instrument. Right? An artist is not a guitarist, and a guitarist is not an artist. It's two different categories and areas of talent. So too. The category of talents that we classified, remember guys, in the second category, right? In the beginning of this last paragraph, we said there's Aleph and Beis, physical talents and spiritual. So he says you can't compare the physical talents to the spiritual talents, which are chinuch, education, v'hadracha, and instruction, litfisosai shel hakishrein belimud haidah, to how it's different than the effects of teaching and instructing. He's setting this up because he's going to talk about it in the next chapter, but just briefly he's saying, not every good student is a good teacher. Put it very simply. There is a talent to being a teacher. We call that chinuch, chinuch and hadracha. Klolei HaChinuch v'hadracha, the name of this essay. And that's different, Yonason, than limud and hayra. Limud and hayra is one area of Torah, of education, but it is not comparable. Just like you can't compare spiritual talents to physical talents, You cannot compare teaching and education, chinuch and hadracha, to learning and knowledge. So right here, the Rebbe, in his brief words, lays the groundwork for the upcoming chapter to explain the difference between the two. And what he's telling the educators at Toim Chetmimim in 1898, and of course every one of us, is that you must really assess yourself and know if you really have the talent in this area, or can you develop a talent in this area that really is deep in your recesses of the heart, and you will reveal it. And not everyone can, and in a way, not everyone should. And that's why when in the 1940s, during and after the Holocaust, when they put people needed jobs, and they became the Talmud Torah teachers in Philadelphia, in New York, in Chicago, all over, and they weren't Shomer Shabbos, and they weren't really teachers, everyone knows the disaster that they created. An entire generation was lost to Yiddishkeit, and Baruch Hashem is coming back, but was lost because of these teachers which weren't really teachers. They needed a job. And the previous Rebbe, the same author, has letters scolding. And it's, some people said, how could the previous Rebbe, who was such a loving Yid, speak this way? Because it was an outrage. It was such an outrage. And I'm talking about here in Borough Park, Yoini, on the corner of 13th Avenue and 50th Street. When I moved here in 1970, we had the entire block, maybe Avi remembers if he ever visited here, was a yeshiva called Eitz Chaim. They knocked it down, I think, in 1980, 82. It started in 1905 or so. The entire block was a big house and property from the old days, and they bought it, and they made it the yeshiva Eitz Chaim. I think maybe Alan Dershowitz went there, and others went there, and they introduced Zionism. It was Ivrit B'Ivrit. Now, they need rebbes. They need teachers. It's Holocaust time, post-Holocaust. Anyone that can read Hebrew, come, teach. Really. Really. And so we had this around the country. And the Frierdiker Rebbe took a very strong stance. He wrote about it. He spoke about it. He called it Treif Talmud Torahs, which is very unusual. Treif Talmud Torahs. Because the teachers were treif. They weren't keeping kosher. And they're teaching kids about Shabbos and kosher. The hypocrisy. And then it spilled over into the Orthodox world, where you had teachers that didn't belong as teachers. And guess what? You still have some of that today. If you don't have the patience and and to teach, you don't belong in the classroom. Because you're not going to have 10 to 20 children or teenagers that are all tzaddikim lich and listening and saying, yes, teacher, yes, Rebbe, yes, Mora. It's not happening. We're all natural. We like, So you need, and again, I can't emphasize enough the importance how we have to cherish teachers. Not enough of that is in our own communities, because they, need the recognition, and to find good teachers is very difficult. But when you find good teachers, pay them more than anyone else, and keep them, and make them happy, because they're the future of your children, our children, and the future children. Okay, enough for the drasha. Everyone have a great day. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Sei gesund. Bye-bye.
All right, be well.
Take it. Good chodesh. Good chodesh. Chodesh ir. Ani Hashem refa'acha. Every one of us should have only good health. Ourselves, our family, and Mashiach now. Bye-bye.